this video, I'm going to show you how to actually sit with and process your emotions, because sitting with your emotions is a term that is like thrown around. We know that this is the key to processing our emotions, but not a lot of people actually show how to do it. And I think it's something that a lot of people say without really understanding what it means. And it's actually not that straightforward. It's like, what do you mean I sit with it? What do you mean I just feel? And that is because when we are feeling, we are in our bodies, feeling that sensation. And when we are thinking, we are in our minds, and we can't be in the two at the same time. So what often happens is when we feel something, we start to create stories in our heads about what we're feeling, about the thing the person said, about why they said it, whatever the scenario is. And that starts to feed the feeling. But truly, if you can actually sit with and feel your emotions, the energy of the emotion only takes 90 seconds to pass through. If it's a particularly strong emotion, you may need to do this a few times because there might be multiple limbs to it. So, for example, if I am going through a breakup or thinking about something like that, and it's making me feel sad, it's making me feel frustrated. If I were to just sit with and be with that feeling of frustration and allow it to come up, then it would only take 90 seconds to pass through. So after that time, I would start to feel lighter. But what happens is, as I sit here, and this is very rife for all or many of us, is that as I sit here and I'm feeling the frustration, I'm feeling the sadness, then the thoughts start to come and the narratives start to come of like, why didn't I see this coming? This always happens to me. Am I ever going to find someone? Am I going to be lonely forever? Like, I mean, there's a whole array of thoughts that we could be thinking at any one time, particularly when we are in a heightened emotional state. And these narratives and these voices are very loud, and there's nothing wrong with them. They are legit. They need to be heard, but they are counterproductive to the process of actually feeling and moving through our emotions. There is a different way to process them. So when we're doing this work, we just kind of want to put them to one side. And my suggestion is, when you try this, if you are in a heightened emotional state, is to do the journaling that I speak about, the giving voice journaling, before you do this process. That way you can dump this onto some paper and maybe even resolve some of it as you do that, resolve it on an intellectual, mental level, and even get to the root of what it's really about. Because sometimes, the scenario that I just went through about those thoughts about like a breakup, the core underneath all of that would be maybe a fear of loneliness or abandonment, something like that, and not really have anything to do with the actual person. And this can also be where it's really handy to have a meditation practice, because in meditation, we cultivate the ability to put our thoughts to one side and to stay present with our feelings and with what is occurring right now. So detaching from the mind, detaching from the narratives, to be with your experience. But if you're finding this challenging, and if you don't have a meditation practice and you have a busy mind, you're not able to separate the thoughts from the moment, I'm going to give you an example. So as you sit here feeling and those thoughts start to pop in, is to just acknowledge them and push them to one side. Say, okay, we're just going to push you over there to the side for the moment, so I can come back to my experience of feeling. And then when another narrative, another story comes in, it's like, pop, 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 pop. No, no, no. I will hear you soon, but not now. Because right now I'm focusing on feeling. And it might even help to Set a timer for like, say, 5 minutes. Because you're going to have all of these interruptions, most likely, then, it's going to be a process of kind of like start, stop, start, stop. But if you can set a timer for like a couple of minutes and trying to come back, I think that will still, even if you don't get the full 90 seconds, I still think that will go a long way to making you feel better, to helping you feel better. And you can always repeat the process. And as you get it down to a fine art, it will only take 90 seconds. But this is a practice. But this is truly the way, because this is how we connect to our heart and our lived embodied experience rather than our brains, which have a wonderful purpose. But in our culture and our society, we really prize the intellect. We prize what this thing is telling us, which sometimes isn't that helpful, right? They're meaning making machines. This happened. Oh, it must mean this. It must mean that. Maybe, maybe not. Sometimes we can never know. Sometimes we can never know why someone did what they did. Sometimes we can never know why certain things have happened. And none of that really makes a difference to the experience that we're having, because it happened and now we feel this. So making meaning doesn't really change what we're feeling. It doesn't really serve us. And we can choose to understand or accept even without knowing, even without having the meaning behind the thing, rather than getting stuck searching, finding, intellectualizing, which stops us from moving forward. So what I want to talk about now is what we're actually doing when we are sitting with the emotions. Because yes, I'm telling you to just sit with and be present and to keep the thoughts out, but how do you actually stay present with your emotions? And the way to do this is to stay present with your experience. So we're staying out of the narratives, we're staying out of our minds, we're staying out of the distraction that causes, which is actually a mechanism to stop us from feeling. That's our brain trying to protect us from feeling the thing that is uncomfortable or painful. But it creates more discomfort and pain, because then these feelings hang around for so much longer. You could be feeling crappy about something for hours, days, weeks, months, years, because you haven't truly processed it, because you haven't just allowed yourself to feel it. And as I said, sometimes you might need to do this process multiple times over certain things, because they can have different kind of limbs to them. But when you find yourself in that moment triggered, having strong emotions, having strong feelings, then to be able to do this will neutralize that. So it's very handy. So as we are sitting with our emotions, we're really just simply being, and being present with our experience. And something that can be helpful to give the mind something to do, because it loves that, is to start to tune into where you feel it in the body. Maybe you feel it in your stomach, maybe you feel it in your chest, in your heart area. Often I find where people feel this is linked to the chakra system. It's very rarely, in my experience, like just in the hands. It's usually in kind of the central area, central column of the body. But if you're feeling something like anger, if you are enraged, you might be feeling it everywhere. And when you identify where you're feeling it, notice what you're actually feeling. What does that sensation feel like? So if it is the anger, it might be like this like pulsing, anger tends to like, it's very like live and electric. Or if it's something like sadness, it can be like a weight and a heaviness. And you can assign it like a visual representation. So it might be a certain color, a certain shape, a certain density. Sometimes things are like mists that just sort of are kind of bubbling or swirling around. And this is just me speaking from my experience of how I feel things and how I visualize things. Or it might be like a big, heavy, dark blob. And as we're tuning into this, we are engaging with it. We are sitting with it. We are noticing it. We're giving time and attention to this feeling. And once you sort of have that visual on it, you can imagine it sitting there and just breathing into that blob, that mist, whatever it looks like. Staying out of your head, not giving it the mic. It might be that sometimes the feeling gets stronger before it dissipates, but usually after we do this, it just kind of starts to like melt away. And as I'm guiding my clients through this, we'll get to a point and they'll be like, oh, yeah, it feels lighter. And that's my experience of doing it with myself as well. So I would love for you to practice this and try this out because this is something that we are not taught, but is like the key to so much.